Hey guys, welcome to episode number 17 of 10-Minute Kick-Ass Coaching. Episode number 17, we are climbing fast. I can't wait till we hit number 100. Do something very special when we hit episode number 100, but we've got a little bit to go yet. On today's episode, we're going to talk about proactive versus reactive. This is something that was just brought up to me about 2 weeks ago from one of the members in the group. And they said, is it better to plan something out versus non-plan something out? Is the stress level better not to have to worry about what is planned out and just kind of go with the seat of your pants and just, things tend to fall in their own place? And a good question, actually, a very, very good question. One of the things that I try to eliminate, I'm a very proactive person. I'm very bad at being reactive. So when it hits the fan, I don't like it because I spend all of my time trying to be proactive. Anybody that knows me knows that is exactly how I am. So the reactive part I have to work on. There's no question about that because I am a planner. I do like to do it. So personally, proactive is better to me. But I'm going to give you some devil's advocates of a couple different scenarios of it. I made some notes. I'm going to put the notes here in the show so we could talk more about it, or you can comment onto it, what your thoughts and philosophies are onto it. But again, today's episode is on being proactive versus being reactive. Proactive people plan a strategy before tactics. That's kind of goes into the battle and war scenario. If you go into war without a strategy or a battle without a strategy, you'll never get to the war. It'll never happen because you're going to be defeated. Too many variables can happen in that. So in that particular situation, being proactive is vital, because if something on your enemy, when you're having a battle and your enemy changes their strategy, you have to change with it. So it's very, very important to make sure you follow those guidelines when it comes to that. Reactive people use tactics, again, before strategy. They go through their own day-to-day things. Now, when you're in the military, and anybody that's here that's on the military, much love to you, much respect for what you've done and sacrifice you gave to our country. Thank you. You have my ultimate respect, and you always will. A tactic is very, very important to follow. If you have it does go back to the chicken or the egg, a plan beforehand, being proactive, but if you have a tactic that you have to do in order to survive on the battlefield, it's vitally important that you follow the tactics, you follow the systems that are in place. If your platoon leader or your leader is saying, go here, pointing out, you go there, you go to this point, it's very important to follow the tactics. The strategy should already be done if there's a strategy ahead of time, but it's very, very important to make sure the tactics are followed. There's no question about that, especially from that particular sense. It can be life-saving when it comes to that. So there are some points to where it can be both sides. You still have to be, again, a little proactive to make sure you're not reacting at that particular time and not following the tactics that are in place. They're there for a reason. They're there to follow, and they're there because they've proven to work time after time. And the same thing in business too as well. The tactics of doing something, if you go into and you're working something logistically and there's a certain process in place that works from one to the other, then the tactic is very, very important. Reactive people wait till it occurs and deal with the issue. True. And maybe their stress level generally will be lower, but when it hits the fan, it's going to be explosive because they're going to go, why did this happen? I don't understand. Well, if there was nothing done ahead of time, then you really can't complain about it because it just happened because there was no planning, no proactivity. So that would be the big thing when it comes to that. Proactive people have regular communication to review. That's very important. We're going to get into actually tomorrow's episode is about meetings, the effectiveness of meetings, and when meetings are complete bullshit. And we're going to go over that tomorrow. What I found, what seems to work. I've done all different types of meetings, from even on the corporate level to a small business level, and I found what really works well. And we'll go over that over the episode tomorrow. So going over what are effective points of communication, what are effective ways to have meetings, why, when, and how, and what they're needed for, we'll go over tomorrow. So I'll get more into that then. But that's a big thing. Reactive people, again, communication after the issue they wait till things hit the fan and they deal with it, and that's not always really the best way to deal with it. You want to be as proactive as possible, in my opinion, when it comes to that. But some people just like to wait till it hits the fan and then complain about it, and you can't. You can't wait till it goes down and say, why did this guy, why did this woman, why did this man, why did they do this stuff? you got to look at yourself and say, I was their leader. Whose fault is it but mine? If they didn't follow and I wasn't good at communicating, then they'll never know. So that's very, 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 very important. And I say reactive people have the communication after the issue again. Proactive people implement systems into their business. Well, a system is a collection of ideas and motions and processes, for lack of better words. I am a systems junkie. You've seen it from episode number 1. I'm always going to talk about the system and why we need the system and what's important about having systems into place. So that one's pretty much a no-brainer to me from my standpoint. But if you don't have a system and don't spend the time to do it, you only really have yourself to look at when things go south. Franchisees in any genre, whether it's food service, restoration, cleaning, hotels, there's a system to everything. Every single one of these franchises have a system. That's why the success level is so good. It's not just the support. The support is nice, pick up the phone, but if you don't have these things in place to follow across, that's it. Now, an entrepreneur, that's for another day altogether too, is the reason to franchise or not to franchise with somebody. You know, an entrepreneur sometimes is so independent, they want to do it completely on their own. They don't want any issues. That's their thing. That's fine. But if you're going to be able to follow a system, a franchise is better for you. If you cannot and you just are always going to have a reason why not, do not buy a franchise. It's not going to be good for either side. So we'll get into that for a different day. Reactive people, again, just think things should be common sense. They think that the person should just know better. And there's a famous saying Benjamin Franklin said, common sense is, how did he say that? Common sense is not so common. And it's true. Way back, good old Ben had it right. It's not something, just because you think it's common sense, because you think it's the right thing to do, because you think this is how it's got to happen, does not mean the other person thinks the same way you do. So common sense dictates that you would be wrong. We talked about the power of assume. Assume makes an ass out of you and me. If you assume something, you're going to be horribly surprised. So common sense falls just right under the assume part. Thinking that you can, that just falls under God-given common sense. It's it. I once heard, I think Dan Kennedy said, he goes, I can work with somebody that just doesn't understand it, but if they don't have common sense, I can't help them. There's just no fixing that. So just remember that is not something that's you're either born with it and can work with it and grow with it, or you're not. And just that, again, that's the power of not assuming that common sense is so common. It's just not. I have reactive people believe things are just common sense. Again, we just went over that. Proactive people plan for the what-if possibility. So they plan it's the what-if factor. It's what if this happens, what if that happens, what if this happens. So let's put things in place simply so everybody can follow them, in place to make sure they're followed. I just had a friend of mine talk about how something was presented. He wanted to see how one of his top people would sell a job if going into the job, and that person knows and watches this, and they're pretty active here in the group. What's the possibility? Now, apparently the leader did a phenomenal job at selling everything. He did it, but it didn't follow the process and the system. So my first question to him was, is the system too complex, or is it simple? Is it something that can be implemented by everybody, not just him? Even if he can do it, and he does it successfully, can every other person that goes out and represents the company at a particular job site or in the sale process, whatever the case is, can they represent the company the same way? Everybody's going to have their own little style on what they're going to say and how present it, and thank God they do, because if you try to copy somebody else consistently, you're gonna fail. There's no way around that. So my question to him was, is the process simple enough that everybody there can follow? Everybody can take in hand and work with and make sure it's done. So that's to be determined how that worked out, but I know that he had a great question, great observation. Why can't this person do that? And it really is dependent on how easy and duplicatable the process is. It's because the process, something that takes 10 minutes when it should take 5, well, then you got to stream it down to 5 to make it simple so everybody can do it in 5 or as close to 5 as possible. But they shouldn't be taking the full 10 minutes if it's not needed. If most of it is loaded with over redundance on things, then that's it. But there are things, especially in the restoration industry, you have to cover with the customer. If you don't, you're going to have a world of problems, because that's going to come back to you. So communication in the restoration field is vital. So that's kind of key. That is pretty much our episode for today. Again, my points on it, I'll give you my final thought process. I believe you should be more proactive than reactive. I believe you're going to plan your business. It is a strategy versus a tactic. Tactics are vital and important, but if you don't plan a strategy, a long-term process, then you're going to have a problem. I was speaking to somebody yesterday about marketing and what I thought might work well for their business, and it was a great conversation. A person actually just joined the group. And I was there under a totally different capacity, and I just had a nice conversation with him. Very bright guy, definitely has a great head on his shoulders and knows what he's doing. And what I tried to do was target in on some of the marketing process. And for him, his process to market to for what he does is pretty, serious. So a person has to take, if he's selling to people, he has to give the importance of the seriousness of the situation and the what if. And the what if is a big what if. So my advice to him was to label his marketing around the what if scenario. And you should not risk things, and people should not risk things. And that's important. That just comes back to having a strategy. When he goes into marketing, having a strategy to say, I want to have a program, not just one, but 1, 2, 3, 4, or sequential things that bring home the point to the customer, to the if he's B2B, to the other business owner, which is a majority of his business. Business owners actually easier to communicate that to than customers, regular customers. Regular residential customers go, I'll buy another computer if it's a computer. I'll buy another truck if it's a truck. I'll buy another truck mount if it's that. I'll buy another portable if it's a portable. I'll buy another whatever. It doesn't make a difference. That particular person needs to know that there is no reason why they shouldn't plan for something to go down ahead of time, because when it does go down, you're not going, oh Jesus, I can't deal with this. So be proactive. Be like Fred. Even though you don't know Fred, be like Fred. Be proactive. Think about things ahead of time. Plan things out. Don't wait till shit hits the fan, and your life will be a lot less stressful. That's today's episode number 17 of 10-Minute Kick-Ass Coaching. And it's a real pleasure to have you here every single day. We do these every single day, 5 days a week. Feel free to leave comments below, and I'll be glad to answer them or cover them in a different episode. If you have some ideas of what you'd like to have covered or questions you'd like to have answered within a 10-minute or less scenario, which I can usually get something across in 10 minutes, being proactive, please feel free to write it down or message it, put it on the board. I'm very active on there. If I'm away for a few hours, I will get right back, or if I'm with coaching clients, I will get right back to you, and we'll take it from there. All right, you have an awesome day. Just a couple days closer to Christmas, so you might see some eventful stuff here on these programs between now and then. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.